Hello, my name is Cosmic ASMR, and today I will be reading to you. This is my first ASMR video, so if it's a little crazy, forgive me. I always loved ASMR. My first one was watching GB ASMR, and then it just escalated from there, and I've watched so many, and I'm not saying I want to be one that great, but it would be nice. Anywho, I decided if I was gonna do something, I'd rather do something I love. So I own so many books right back here, and I decided that let's start reading. All right, so Sarah Dessen is my favorite author, so I figured I'd try reading one of her books. This one is called Just Listen. You can probably find it at Barnes and Noble, any bookstore that you have in your town. All right, let's get into it. Chapter 1. I taped the commercial back in April, before anything had happened, and promptly forgot about it. A few weeks ago, it had started running, and suddenly I was everywhere. On the rows of screens hanging over the ellipticals at the gym, on the monitor they have at the post office that's supposed to distract you from how long you've been waiting in line. And now here, on the TV in my room, as I sat at the edge of my bed, fingers clenched into my palms, trying to make myself get up and leave. It's that time of year again. I stared at myself on the screen as I was 5 months earlier, looking for any difference, some visible proof of what had happened to me. First, though, I was struck by the sheer oddness of seeing myself without benefit of a mirror or photograph. I had never gotten used to it, even after all this time. Football games, I watched myself say. I was wearing a baby blue cheerleader uniform, hair pulled back tight into a ponytail, and clutching a huge megaphone, the kind nobody ever used anymore, emblazoned with a K. Study hall. Cut to me a serious plaid skirt and brown cropped sweater, which I remembered feeling itchy and so wrong to be wearing just as it was getting warm finally. And of course, social life. I leaned in, staring at the me on screen, now outfitted in jeans and a glittery tee and sitting on a bench trying to speak this line while a group of other girls chatted silently behind me. The director, fresh faced and just out of film school, had explained to me the concept of this his creation. The girl who has everything, he'd said, moving his hands in a tight circular motion as if that was all it took to encompass something so vast, not to mention vague. Clearly it meant having a megaphone, some smarts, and a big group of friends. Now I might have dwelled on the explicit irony of this last one, but the on-screen me was already moving on. It's all happening this year, I said. Now I was in a pink gown, a sash-winning homecoming queen, stretched across my midsection as the boy in a tux stepped up beside me, extending his arm. I took it, giving him a wide smile. He was a sophomore at the local university and mostly kept to himself at the shooting. Although later, as I was leaving, he'd asked for my number. How had I forgotten that? The best times, the me on screen was saying now. The best memories. And you'll find the right clothes for them, all at Koff's department store. The camera moved in, closer, closer, till all you could see was my face, the rest dropping away. This had been before that night, before everything had happened but Sophie, before this long, lonely summer of secrets and silence. I was a mess, but this girl, she was fine. You could tell in the way she stared at me, whirled so confidently as she opened her mouth to speak again. Make your new year the best one yet, she said, and I felt my breath catch, anticipating the next line, the last line, the one that only this time was finally true. It's time to go back to school. The shot froze, the Koff's logo appearing beneath me. In moments, it would switch to a frozen waffle commercial or the latest weather, this 15 seconds folding seamlessly into another. But I didn't wait for that. Instead, I picked up the remote, turned myself off, and headed out the door. I'd had over 3 months to get ready to see Sophie, but when it happened, I still wasn't ready. I was in the parking lot before first bell, trying to muster up what it would take to get out and officially let the year begin. As people streamed past, talking and laughing, en route to the courtyard, I kept working on all the maybes. Maybe she was over it now. Maybe something else had happened over the summer to replace our little drama. Maybe it was never as bad as I thought it was. All of these were long shots, still possibilities. I sat there until at the very last moment before finally drawing the keys out of the ignition. When I reached the door handle, turning to my window, she was right there. For a second, we just stared at each other, and I instantly noticed the changes in her. Her curly, her curly dark hair was shorter, her earrings new. She was skinnier, if that was possible, and had done away with the thick eyeliner she'd taken to wearing the previous spring, replacing it with a more natural look. All bronzes and pinks. I wondered, in her first glance, what was different in me. Just as I thought this, Sophie opened her perfect mouth, narrowed her eyes at me, and delivered the verdict I spent my summer waiting for. The glass between us didn't muffle the sound or the reaction of the people passing by. I saw a girl from my English class the year before narrow her eyes while another girl, a stranger, laughed out loud. Sophie, though, remained expressionless as she turned her back, hiking her bag over one shoulder, and starting down to the courtyard. My face was flushed, and I could feel people staring. I wasn't ready for this, but then I probably never would be, and this year, like so much else, wouldn't wait. I had no choice but to get out of my car with everyone watching, and begin it in earnest, alone, so I did. I had first met Sophie 4 years earlier, at the beginning of the summer after sixth grade. I was at the neighborhood pool, standing in the snack bar line with two damn dollar bills to buy a Coke, when I felt someone step up behind me. I turned my head, and there was this girl, a total stranger, standing there in a skimpy orange bikini and matching thick platform flip-flops. She had olive skin and thick, curly dark hair pulled up into a high ponytail, and was wearing black sunglasses and a bored, impatient expression. In our neighborhood, where everyone knew everyone, it was like she'd fallen out of the sky. I didn't mean to stare, but apparently I was. What? She said to me. I could see myself reflected in the lenses of her glasses, small and out of perspective. What are you looking at? I felt my face flush, as it did any time anybody raised their voice at me. I was entirely too sensitive to tone, so much so that even TV court shows could get me upset. I always had to change the channel when the judge ripped into anyone. Nothing, I said, and turned back around. A moment later, the high school guy working the snack bar waved me up with a tired look. While he poured my drink, I could feel the girl behind me, her presence like a weight, as I smoothed out my two bills out flat on the glass beneath my fingers, concentrating on getting every single crease. After I paid, I walked away, studiously keeping my eyes on the parked cement of the walkway as I made my way back around the deep end to where my best friend, Clark Reynolds, was waiting. I'm not sure if her name was Clarky or Clark, but that's how I read it. Whitney said to tell you she's going home, she said, blowing her nose as I carefully put the Coke on the pavement beside my chair. I told her we could walk. Okay, I said. My sister Whitney had just gotten her license, which meant that she had to drive me places. Getting home, however, remained my own responsibility, whether from the pool, which was walking distance, or the mall one town over, which wasn't. Whitney was a loner, even then. Any space around her was her personal space. Just by existing, you were encroaching. That's how I feel. It was only after I sat down that I finally allowed myself to look again at the girl with the orange bikini. She had left the snack bar and was standing across the pool from us, her towel over one arm, a drink in her other hand, surveying the layout of benches and beach chairs. Here, Clarky said, handing over the deck of cards she was holding. It's your deal. Clarky had been my best friend since we were 6 years old. There were tons of kids in our neighborhood, but for some reason most of them were in their teens, like my sisters, or 4 and below, a result of the baby boom a couple of years previously. When Clarky's family moved from Washington, D.C., our moms met at a community watch meeting. As soon as they realized we were the same age, they put us together and we've stayed that way ever since. Clarky had been born in China, and the Reynolds had adopted her when she was 6 months old. We were the same height, but that was about all we had in common. I was blonde-haired and blue-eyed, a typical green, while she had the darkest, shiniest hair I'd ever seen and eyes so brown they were almost black. While I was timid and too eager to please, Clarky was more serious, her tone, personality, and appearance all measured and thoughtful. I had been modeling since before I could even remember, following my sister before me. Clarky was a total tomboy, the best soccer player on our block, not to mention a whiz at cards, especially gin rummy, at which she'd been beating me all summer. Can I have a sip of your drink? Clarky asked me. Then she sneezed. It's hot out here. I nodded, reaching down to get it for her. Clarky had had bad allergies year round, but in summer they hit fever pitch. She was usually either stuffed up, dripping, or blowing from April to October, and no amount of shots or pills seemed to work. I'd long ago grown used to her adenoidal voice, as well as the omnipresent pack of Kleenex in her pocket or hand. There was an organized hierarchy to the seating at our pool. The lifeguards got the picnic tables near the snack bar, while the moms and little kids stuck by the shallow end in the baby pool. Clarky and I preferred the half-shaded area behind the kiddie slides, where the more popular high school guys like Chris Pennington, 3 years older than me and hands down the most gorgeous guy in our neighborhood, and I thought then, possibly the world, hung out by the high dive. The prime spot was a stretch of chairs between the snack bar and the lap lane, which was usually taken by the most popular high school girls. This was where my oldest sister, Kristen, was stretched out in a chase wearing a hot pink bikini and fanning herself with a Glamour magazine. Once I dealt out our cards, I was surprised to see the girl in orange walk over to where Kristen was sitting, taking the chair next to her. Molly Clayton, Kristen's best friend, who was on her other side, nudged her and then nodded at the girl. Kristen looked up and over, then shrugged and laid back down, throwing her arm over her face. Annabelle? Clarky had already picked up her cards and was impatient to start beating me. It's your draw. Oh, I said, turning back to face her. Right. The next afternoon, the girl was back, this time in a silver bathing suit. When I got there, she was already set up in the same chair my sister had been in the day before. Her towel spread out, bottled water beside her, magazine in her lap. Clarky was at tennis lessons, so I was alone when Kristen and her friends arrived about an hour later. Sorry, for a second I thought I skipped a page or something. So I was alone when Kristen and her friends arrived about an hour later. They came in loud as always, their shoes thwacking down the pavement. When they reached the usual spot and saw the girl sitting there, they slowed, then looked at one another. Molly Clayton looked annoyed, but Kristen just moved about 4 chairs down and set up camp as always. For the next few days, I watched as the new girl kept up her stubborn efforts to infiltrate my sister's group. What began as just taking a chair escalated by day 3 to following them to the snack bar. The next afternoon, she got in the water seconds after they did, staying just about a foot down the wall as they bobbed and talked, splashing one another. By the weekend, she was trailing behind them constantly, a living shadow. It had to be annoying. I'd seen Molly shoot her a couple of nasty looks, and even Kristen had asked her to back up, please, when she'd gotten a little too close to the deep end. But the girl didn't seem to care. If anything, she just stepped up her efforts more, as if it didn't matter what they were saying as long as they were talking to her, period. So, my mother said one night at dinner, I heard a new family's moved into the Daughtry's house over on Sycamore. The Daughtry's moved? My father asked. My mother nodded. Back in June, to Toledo, remember? My father thought for a second. Right, he said, finally nodding. Toledo. I also heard, my mom continued, passing the bowl of pasta she was holding to Whitney, who immediately passed it on to me, that they have a daughter your age, Annabelle. I think I saw her the other day when I was over at Margie's. Really? I said. She nodded. She had dark hair, a bit taller than you. Maybe you've seen her around the neighborhood? I thought for a second. I don't know. That's who that is, Kristen said suddenly. She put down her fork with a clank. The stalker from the pool. Oh my god, I knew she had to be way younger than us. Hold on. Now my father was paying attention. There's a stalker at the pool? I hope not, my mother said in her worried voice. She's not a stalker, really, Kristen said. She's just this girl who's been hanging around us. It's so creepy. She sits beside us and follows us around and doesn't talk, and she's always listening to what we're saying. I've told her to get lost, but she just ignores me. God, I can't believe she's only 12. That makes it even sicker. So dramatic, Whitney muttered, spearing a piece of lettuce with her fork. She was right, of course. Kristen was our resident drama queen. Her emotions were always at full throttle, as with her mouth. She never stopped talking, even if she was well aware you weren't listening to her. In contrast, Whitney was the silent type, which meant the few words she uttered always carried that much more meaning. Kristen, my mother said now, be nice. Mom, I've tried that. But if you saw her, you'd understand. It's strange. My mother took a sip of her wine. Moving to a new place is difficult, you know. Maybe she doesn't know how to make friends. She obviously doesn't, Kristen told her. Which means that it might be your job to meet her halfway, my mother finished. She's 12, Kristen said as if this was on par with being diseased or on fire. So is your sister, my father pointed out. Kristen picked up her fork and pointed at him. Exactly, she said. Beside me, Whitney snorted, but my mom, of course, was already turning her attention on me. Well, Annabelle, she said, maybe you could make an effort, if you do see her, to say hello or something. I didn't tell my mother I'd already met this new girl, mostly because she would have been horrified she'd been so rude to me. Now that this would have changed her expectations for my behavior. My mother was famously polite and expected the same of us, regardless of the circumstances. Our whole lives were supposed to be the high road. Okay, I said. Maybe I will. Good girl, she said, and that I hoped was that. The next afternoon, though, when Clarky and I got to the pool, Kristen was already there, lying out with Molly on one side and the new girl on the other. I tried to ignore this as we got settled in our spot, but eventually I glanced over to see Kristen watching me. When she caught up a moment later, shooting me a look, then headed toward the snack bar, the new girl immediately followed her. I knew what I had to do. I'll be back in a second, I told Clarky, who was reading a Stephen King novel and blowing her nose. Okay, she said. I got up, then started around by the high dive, crossing my arms over my chest as I passed Chris Pennington. He was lying on a beach chair, a towel over his eyes, while a couple of his buddies wrestled on the pool deck. Now, instead of sneaking glances at him, which other than swimming and getting beaten at cards was my main activity at the pool that summer, I'd get pinched out again. All because my mother was insistent we be raised as the best of good Samaritans. Great. I could have told Kristen about my previous run-in with this girl, but I knew better. Unlike me, she did not shy away from confrontation. If anything, she stepped toward it, before overtaking it completely. She was the family powder keg, and I had lost track of the number of times I stood off to the side, cringing and blushing, while she made her various displeasures clear to salespeople, other drivers, or various ex-boyfriends. I loved her, but the truth was, she made me nervous. Whitney, in contrast, was a silent fumer. She'd never tell you what when she was mad, you just knew it by the expression on her face. The steely narrowing of her eyes, the heavy, enunciated sighs that could be so belittling that words, any words, seemed preferable to them. When she and Kristen fought, which, with 2 years between them, was fairly often, it always seemed at first like a one-sided argument, since all you could hear was Kristen endlessly listing accusations and slights. Pay more attention, though, you'd notice Whitney's stony, heavy silences, as well as the rebuttals she offered. Few, as they were, that always cut to the point much more harshly than Kristen's swirling, whirly commentaries. One open, one closed. It was no wonder that the first image that came to mind when I thought of either of my sisters was a door. With Kristen, it was the front one to our house, through which she was always coming in or out, usually in mid-sentence, a gaggle of friends trailing behind her. Whitney's was the one to her bedroom, which she preferred to keep shut between her and the rest of us always. As for me, I fell somewhere between my sisters and their strong personalities, the very personification of the vast gray area that separated them. I was not bold and outspoken, or silent and calculating. I had no idea how anyone would describe me, or what would come to mind at the sound of my name. I was just Annabelle. My mother, conflict adverse herself, hated it when my sisters fought. Why can't you just be nice? She'd plead with them. They might have rolled their eyes, but a message sank in with me. That being nice was the ideal, the one place where people didn't get loud or so quiet they could scare you. If you could just be nice, then you wouldn't have to worry about arguments at all. But being nice wasn't as easy as it seemed, especially when the rest of the world could be so mean. By the time I got to the snack bar, Kristen had disappeared, of course, but the girl was still there, waiting for the guy behind the counter to ring up her candy bar. Oh well, I thought as I walked up to her, here goes nothing. Hi, I said. She just looked at me, her expression unreadable. I'm Annabelle. You just moved here, right? She didn't say anything for what seemed like a really long while, during which time Kristen walked out of the ladies' room behind her. She stopped when she saw us talking. I continued, now even more uncomfortable. I, think we're in the same grade? The girl reached up, pushing her sunglasses farther up her nose. So? she said in that same sharp, snide voice as the first time she'd addressed me. I just thought, I said, that since you know we're the same age, you might want to hang out or something. Another pause. Then the girl said, as if clarifying, you want me to hang out with you? She made it sound so ridiculous I immediately began backtracking. I mean, you don't have to. I told her. It was just, no. She cut me off flatly. Then she tilted her head back and laughed. No way. The thing is, if it had just been me there, that would have been it. I would have turned around, face flushed, and gone back to Clarky, game over. But it wasn't just me. Hold on, Kristen said, her voice loud. What did you just say? The girl turned around. When she saw my sister, her eyes widened. What? She said, and I couldn't help but notice how different this, the first word she'd ever said to me, sounded as she said it now. I said, Kristen repeated, her own voice sharp. What did you just say to her? Uh-oh, I thought. Nothing, the girl replied. That's my sister, Kristen said, pointing at me. And you were just a total bitch to her. By this point, I was already both cringing and blushing. Kristen, however, put her hand on her hip, which meant she was just getting started. I wasn't a bitch, the girl said, taking off her sunglasses. You were, and you know it, Kristen said, cutting her off. So you can stop denying it. And stop following me around, you too, okay? You're creeping me out. Come on, Annabelle. I was frozen to the spot, just looking at the girl's face. Without her sunglasses, her expression stricken. She suddenly looked 12. Just staring at us as Kristen grabbed my wrist, taking me back to where she and her friends were sitting. Unbelievable, she kept saying, and as I looked across the pool, I could see Clarky watching me confused as Kristen pulled me down onto her chair. Molly sat up, blinking, reaching up to catch the untied straps of her bikini. What happened? She asked, and as Kristen began to tell her, I glanced back toward the snack bar, but the girl was gone. Then I saw her, through the fence behind me, walking across the parking lot barefoot, her head ducked down. She left all her stuff on the chair beside me, a towel, her shoes, a bag with a magazine, and a billfold, a pink hairbrush. I kept waiting for her to realize this and turn back for it. She didn't. Her things stayed there all afternoon, and after I'd gone back to sit with Clarky and told her everything, after we played several hands of rummy and swam until our fingers were pruny, after Kristen and Molly left and other people took their chairs, all the way up until the lifeguard finally blew the whistle, announcing closing time, and Clarky and I packed up and walked around the edge of the pool, sunburned and hungry and ready to go home. I knew this girl was not my problem. She'd been mean to me twice, and therefore was not deserving of my pity or help. But as we passed the chair, Clarky stopped. We can't just leave it, she said, bending over to gather up the shoes and stuff them into the bag. And it's on our way home. I could have argued the point, but then I thought again of her walking across the parking lot, barefoot, alone. So I pulled the towel off the chair, folding it over my own. Yeah, I said. Okay. Still, when we got to the Dodgers' old house, I was relieved to see all the windows were dark and there was no car in the driveway, so we could just leave the girl's stuff and be done with it. But as Clarky bent down to stick the bag against the front door, it opened, and there she was. She had on cut-off shorts and a red T-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, no sunglasses, no high-heeled sandals. When she saw us, her face flushed. Hi, Clarky said after just long enough to be noticed pause. Then she sneezed before adding, We brought your stuff. The girl just looked at her for a second as if she didn't understand what she was saying, which, with Clarky's congestion, she probably didn't. I leaned over and picked up the bag, holding it out to her. You left this, I said. She looked at the bag, then up at me, her expression guarded. Oh, she said as reaching for it. Thanks. Behind us, a bunch of kids coasted past on their bikes, their voices loud as they called out to one another. Then it was quiet again. Honey? I heard a voice call out from the end of the dark hallway behind her. Is someone there? It's okay, she said over her shoulder. Then she stepped forward, shutting the door behind her, and came out onto the porch. She quickly moved past us, but not before I saw that her eyes were red and swollen. She'd been crying. And suddenly, like so many other times, I heard my mother's voice in my head. Moving to a new place is tough. Maybe she doesn't know how to make friends. Look, I said. About what happened, my sister, it's fine, she said, cutting me off. I'm fine. But as she said it, her voice cracked, just slightly, and she turned her back to us, putting a hand to her mouth. I just stood there, totally unsure what to do. But as I looked at Clarky, I saw she was already digging into the pocket of her shorts to pull out her ever-present pack of Kleenex. She drew one out, then reached around the girl, offering it to her. A second later, the girl took it, silently, and pressed it to her face. "I'm Clarky," she said, "and this is Annabelle. In the years to come, it would be this moment that I always came back to. Being Clarkley in the summer, after our 6th grade year, standing there behind that girl's turned back. So much might have been different for me, for all of us, if something else had happened right then. At the time, though, it was like so many other moments, fleeting and unimportant. As she turned around, now not crying, surprisingly composed, actually, to face us. "Hi," she said. "I'm Sophie." And that is chapter 1. This is my favorite Sarah Dessen book. I bought this when I was still in high school, and I own 5 other books now. I'm trying to work on the collection, but that's all I have right now. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will try to make more when I can. I am busy. I just moved here. I still have college, but I will try my best to create more. Maybe I'll do other books. I do have kids' books if that's what you prefer. Let me know what you want in the comments down below, and I will see you guys again. Bye.